Good morning.
Wow,
Get
I
that-
didn't take that one.
Did you get that sorted out?
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to the October 1st, 2019 Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session. And we'll start with introductions. I'm John Hutchings, the chair of the board. The vice chair is excused or be here, we don't know. Shortly. MIA, okay. And we have, go ahead.
Ty Menser, District 3 Commissioner.
Vicki Larkin, Commissioner Edwards' office.
Thomasina Cooper, Town Manager's office.
Romero Chavez, County Manager.
I love bouncing around, nobody knows what to expect.
La Bonita Beaumar, Clifford Ford.
And great, huge backbone of the organization.
Robin Fords and Vicki, this is Megan Porterfellow Information.
So thank you for watching and thank you for attending. And we're going to go through this agenda and then go through a stack of stuff that'll be self-explanatory. And kind of oddly enough, we're going to start with the Board of Health agenda. Let's not do that. That's going to throw me off.
Shelley needs to leave. That's the reason
Oh,
why I
she's
put
here,
number
okay.
one. So I appreciate your diligence, Commissioner.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter. All right, we're going to start with the Board of Health agenda, draft agenda for October the 8th, next Tuesday. And go ahead, Shelley, introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. I'm Shelley Slutter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services and
Lydia.
Administrator of the Board of Health.
Lydia Hodgkinson, Clerk of the Board of Health.
Welcome. So we will convene the meeting on the 8th of October at about 3:30 and approve the agenda and the minutes, and then get into proclamations. And the first one is a Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we will have Nicole Woolsey from the American Cancer Society that will come and give a presentation to you about the importance of breast cancer awareness. We will also discuss in the proclamation disparities and data from Thurston County and ways in which people can take care of their health by getting mammograms and performing self-exams and just in general raising awareness of this important issue. And we will be wearing pink to honor breast cancer survivors and raise awareness of the issue.
Yes, I was looking for the proclamation, but we don't have it in here. But we'll find it. It's around somewhere. Oh, it's okay.
Time to pull out my pink suit then, you're saying?
Yes, but also you're going to get to this later in your agenda, but you'll have Domestic Violence Awareness Month the same day at your BoCC meeting, so you have to wear purple as well. So purple and pink is what you need to remember to
You
wear.
have pink cowboy boots, don't you?
I wish.
You wish? Be careful what you wish for. All right.
I'm a bluegrass musician. I have a lot of flamboyant Western wear, but not pink boots.
And there will be people here for that, for the proclamation?
Yes, from the American Cancer Society, Nicole Woolsey, and she comes here graciously every year and shares stories. And last year, I believe, had some survivors as well that shared their very touching stories. So I don't know yet if Nicole will be bringing anyone with her.
Okay.
But we'll know that for next week before the Board of Health meeting.
Great, thank you. And that takes us to agenda item number 3, the opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. Are you aware of anything, or any hot issue?
I am not aware of anyone that should be attending.
Okay. That'll take us to item number 4, department items. The first is Healthy Schools Pilot and Voluntary Environmental Health School Inspection Program.
Yes,
It's a long title.
so this is a really great program that we're excited to highlight at the Board of Health. We have a Healthy Schools pilot at Griffin School District to help Griffin convert to non-toxic cleaning products and other products within their schools. And so Jennifer Johnson, our Education and Outreach Specialist, and Sammy Berg, our Senior Environmental Health Specialist, will be doing a short presentation just to share information about that great work and takeaways from that pilot that can be replicated in other schools and homes.
Okay. Any questions on that? Questions or comments? No, sir. All right. Agenda item number 5, the draft homeless community inclement weather preparation.
It will not be draft for next week, but Keely Marino, our Homeless and Affordable Housing Coordinator, will be talking about efforts of the Hazardous Weather Task Force and what we can do and what the task force is working on, and as well as what Keely and the community is working on to prepare for upcoming inclement weather for vulnerable populations and those without shelter.
Okay. Anything? Excuse me. Item number 6 is ordinance establishing Board of Health meeting times and
Yeah.
location.
Yes, you held a public hearing on this matter on September 10th and gave the appropriate minimum 20-day notice for that public hearing. We did not have, well, we did have one public comment at that time, and this ordinance will amend the Thurston County Code relating to our regular meeting times of the Board of Health to include this agenda setting as well as other special meeting times to give more flexibility for the Board of Health to meet and ensure that the public has a full opportunity to participate and be made aware of any Board of Health meetings.
Okay. Anything on the ordinance?
No, sir.
All right. Takes us to item number 7, 8, and 9, which is the we report on health-related activities, the health officer's report, and Dr. Wood will be here next week.
Dr. Wood will not be here, and I'll be prepared to give her report. And the main focus of that report will be to discuss recent vaping-related illnesses, as well as restrictions on vaping products by the Washington State Board of Health and the governor's recent declaration regarding vaping products.
Okay, and then your report.
And then my report, and I'll report on the great work that our department has been working on over the last month.
And then we adjourn. And that's a very doable agenda. Any additions or?
No, that's all, sir.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Shelley.
much.
Thanks, Lydia. Now we're moving on to the draft agenda for this afternoon, October 1, 2019. BoCC meeting. We'll convene the meeting at 2 o'clock. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Gary Edwards, and then approval of the agenda and board meeting minutes from September 24th. And when it comes to presentations, then the first one is Emergency Services, presentation for Proclamation of Thurston County Flood Awareness Week.
Yeah, Commissioner, for your consideration will be for you to proclaim the week of October 14th, 2019 as the Thurston County Flood Awareness Week. This is a yearly event, and your Director of Emergency Services, Kurt Harding, will be at the podium to give you some feedback and background as to about the proclamation.
Okay.
And he's here if you have any particular questions.
Any questions or comments?
No.
Oh, okay. I just want to say hi, that's all. Next presentation is Public Health and Social Services Walk to School Month.
Yeah, you also heard some feedback from Chris Hawkins. This is, again, a yearly event for the commissioners to consider proclaiming October 2009 Walk to School Month in Thurston County, and also invites to participate on the Walk to School Day on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019.
Okay, anything?
Nope, that's on me. That's
No, I've already
tomorrow.
done my part.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow, and you are all invited to participate on that. I think you will enjoy it, and the kids and teachers will appreciate you being involved in that.
You have a scheduling conflict? Wednesday morning. Okay. Opportunity for the public to address the board. Are you aware of anything? I would imagine maybe something.
Maybe something in terms of perhaps the courthouse. I just like to, later on your agenda, you have, I'd like to highlight a letter that you received from Mr. Pettit. He might be addressing the board this afternoon. But I'd like to circle back as to that letter, meaning you received the letter on Friday the 19th, 29th, last Friday, where Mr. Pettit highlights some areas of the special meetings and in regular meetings of the Board of County Commissioners. I think he makes a good point. He has good items that he highlighted on that letter. I reached out to Mr. Pettit yesterday, and I stated that I really appreciate his feedback and concerns. And also I explained what I was planning to do. As a result of, and later on this agenda, you have to set a public hearing to amend Code 202, and that's related to the board meetings, both special and regular meetings. And as a result of that particular action, then I will be developing a comprehensive checklist as to how we consistently announce and practice special meetings and regular meetings. And really the intent of that is codifying everything into the Thurston County Code. So I wish he could be here, but and that's the conversation that I had with Mr. Pettit yesterday.
Okay. Any other public comment?
No.
You might expect? You, Gary?
No, sir.
I don't know if there will be, but anything on the flex unit or the HCP or Thurston Conservation District. You never know.
You never know.
It's a new day every day. That takes us to the county manager's update.
And again, I will probably just highlight the correspondence that Mr. Pettit submitted to you, and I will highlight the report that I just gave you based on the conversation that I had with Mr. Pettit yesterday.
All right. And that takes us to agenda item number 3, consent items A and B. The first one, information technology, Laserfish.
Yeah,
purchase.
you reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, where the county is currently using the Microsoft InfoPath, and that is the online forms that we use particular to the agenda item summary. And this is to all the forms that we use when staff is submitting items for the board's consideration. This particular application was discontinued in 2013 by Microsoft. And over the last few years, we have started looking as to how we can replace this particular application. And we have been waiting for Laserfish, which is another application that we use in other areas of the county. Finally, they came up with similar forms. And at this point, we're ready. The IT department is ready to go ahead and purchase this application for start using this different format. They will be fully supported by Laserfish. This particular application has an initial cost of $41,680.95 with a $5,770 maintenance fee per year. This particular cost is included on the already included in the budget, and has been part of the IT funding strategy for at least the last 2 years. And Dennis is here to answer any questions if you may have any.
Yeah, we did chew this up last week, but Dennis Osorio, IT Director, is here if you have any questions.
I remember last week's discussion, so I'm good.
I'm good, Will, as well.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Dennis. 3B is the auditor's financial services report. And we'll have the voucher list. We'll get to that. I've had a chance to review it. Did you guys?
Good.
Okay. Thank you. The department items, now we're moving to agenda item number 4, Public Health and Social Services, Department of Ecology Interagency Agreement.
Yeah, this particular proposal you also reviewed last week, Commissioners, and provides resources for public. This particular agreement is a grant they will be receiving from the Department of Ecology. They will provide resources for public health and social services to provide technical assistance and education outreach to small businesses, to prevent pollution of water on the state, the states of the state and waters of the state as part of the local source control partnership. And the Environmental Health Division staff will conduct source control site visits and pollution prevention activities to small businesses that generate hazardous waste or have the potential to pollute stormwater. As you may recall, you had a good conversation with our Story. He is also available to answer any questions today here. And one of the questions that you ask is small business considered, chains or not? It's all inclusive. A small business is a small business that actually have those potential discharges to the waters of the state. And again, I think this program is comprehensive in terms of education. And again, Art is here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions?
The one thing that sticks out to me is there's not, like, the way the item's worded, you really don't know what it's about in terms of public transparency.
Okay.
Is there a way to stick just a couple words in there so folks know that this contract and agreement relates to hazardous waste program or something?
Yeah, we can certainly do that, yeah.
Happy to work on that. This is Art Starry, the Environmental Health Division Director, and be happy to rework the language to make it more transparent. We're allowed but needed to get something done really quick.
Couple words.
Yeah, we'll add that on the motion.
And just
Yeah,
to let
thank
you know, I'll be the one presenting these items, though we didn't know if Patrick or I would be doing it, and it works better this afternoon for my schedule to be the presenter, so.
Thank you, Art. Do you have any questions or comments on
Well,
this?
if I had any question, it'd be about that horrendous agreement number that I'm going to be reading, and that's all.
I'm sorry.
It's a little different.
That's one of the prices you pay if you accept the money, is you have to.
No, that's the next item.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Be sure you get all those zeros in there. All right. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Art. And I don't know, you're going to be here for 4B as well
I'll
then?
be here for 4B as well. I'll sit here and if you have questions.
It's Ecology's solid waste assistance, financial assistance agreement.
Yeah, this is a grant that we received from the Department of Ecology. The grant is for $127,304.50. And this particular grant requires a match of $42,434.83 for a total cost of $169,739.33. That's the cost on the agreement. On the SWMLS WFA 2019 THCOPH 00036 agreement.
You know, if that was a password, no one could ever crack that or remember it.
And this particular funding will provide support to our solid waste program, permitting inspection and solid waste enforcement activities. Solid waste is a core public health, as you know, and this certainly is help us conduct the requirements, which is outlined on Article 5 of the Thurston County Sanitary Code.
Okay. Anything?
I guess I'd only follow up on Commissioner Mentzer's comment about if you want the public to know a little bit more about what it does is all.
Yeah, we can.
I don't know what kind of verbiage you'd add in there, but it really doesn't say much about what it does.
We can probably add a solid waste management program.
Yeah, who benefits from the assistance?
Yep.
So we'll work on that as well.
You got that, Law? All right. Then we move to the county manager's update. Thank you, Art. Setting a public hearing. Not update.
This is for you to consider setting a public hearing for you to take public testimony related to revisions to the Thurston County Code 202. And this proposal also includes waiving the 20-day legal notice requirements and go back to the state requirement, which is 10 days. As a result, the proposal is to set the public hearing for October 15, 2018 at 3 in the afternoon here in this building and room 280. I have copies. I think I believe you reviewed of this proposal last week. Let me hand over and let me walk you through what this proposal is all about.
Thank you, sir.
Copies. And I think this is related to some of the items Mr. Pettit highlighted on the letter he submitted to you on September 29th. And the attempt to this proposal is just to bring all the requirements, state requirements related to regular meetings and the special meetings under the Thurston County Code. And that is the intent. As you can see in page number 2, it speaks about RCW 36320803, which is related to regular meetings. Is a little more in detail as to what the code is going to allow us to do, as opposed to rely on the RCWs. I think codifying everything into a single umbrella is going to make sense. And also, we add an additional section on that will be 2.02025, which speaks about special meetings and joint meetings. And again, this is an attempt to, be transparent with the public, and also give us the opportunity to have a clear understanding as to what the regular meetings and the special meetings the board holds and what will be the proper notification as a result of those meetings that you conduct. That is really the gist of this proposal. And again, this public hearing is for you to receive public testimony related to these proposed changes on October 15, 2018 at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, just give us a minute, Romero.
Could I ask a question of the county manager?
Certainly, yeah. Go ahead.
We're going to set this potentially we're going to set this public meeting date today. Should we find anything in here between now and until after the meeting date, we'll be able to make adjustments to it then, right?
So the public hearing, if you said, it will be based on the proposal that you have before you.
Right.
And that's how the public will be providing public testimony. After you receive public testimony, you do have the option to
make any
make
adjustments.
adjustments.
Okay.
That in the process of public testimony, you may not have the option to change it.
And maybe one other thing, is there any chance, I don't know if my seatmates will agree or not, but in this action, move to waive the 20-day legal notice and change it to 10 days or something like that? I'm just wanting to think the public might
Yep,
want to be
we can-
more
we can add the 10 days,
informed
yeah.
just by glancing at
Yep.
this. I know we'll cover that, but is that okay? Okay.
For setting the hearing?
Just the notice about the 20-day, we're changing it from 20-day
What section are you in?
to the 10-day.
I think he's referring
Under
to
county manager.
the action.
I'm not
Oh,
commenting
yeah,
on this because we're going to be able to make adjustments on
Got it.
this.
And perhaps what Commissioner Edwards suggesting is to move to waive the 20-day
20-day
legal
legal
notice and go with a 10-day legal notice to add the 10 days, because that's what is required by law.
That's what we're doing.
Minimum.
So,
I think that's what he's
Yeah.
requesting to do.
that's right.
Oh, yeah, well, we'd have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. Any
Yeah,
other comments?
we'll change that language.
Any other comments or questions on that? Gary, anything more?
No,
Okay.
I think any other issues on this after the hearing, we'll be able to make adjustments.
All right, and 3B, Romero, is to set a public hearing related to the levy of regular property tax.
Yes.
No? Yeah.
This proposal before you is also to consider for you to set a public hearing where you receive public testimony related to the revised ordinance to send to the voters for a ballot measure related to the new courthouse project. Is a revision on the action, suggesting to hold the public hearing on room 152 as opposed to 280 on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019 at 5:30 in the afternoon. And we'll add the additional language that Commissioner Edwards suggested in terms of waiving the 20-day and go with the 10 days as well. So let me pass around some of the latest version. So you briefly reviewed this proposal last week, and you had a couple of comments. And those comments was related to section number 2, where it speaks about the purpose, 2A, but particularly related to language on section 2B, alternative purposes. And Commissioner Mensah wanted to have a little more detail as to what the alternative purposes will be. So this proposed language states as follows. Let me read the whole section 2B as alternative purposes. If the board shall determine that it has become impractical to accomplish any of such improvements or portions thereof by reason of changed conditions or needs, incompatible development, costs sustainably in excess of those estimated, the county shall not be required to accomplish such improvements and may apply levy proceeds or any portions thereof to other portions of the improvements, to other capital improvements, or to payments of principal or interest of the bonds, as the board may determine after holding a public hearing. And I think that's probably what this language is a little more prescriptive as to the options that you have. It's something similar the school districts uses on their bonds. And also we added for your consideration that before the board takes any action, you need to hold a public hearing if for any reason the project doesn't materialize. That is the proposed language. Then we have the next, any questions on that?
No, I don't have any.
Okay.
Again, we will have time after we have the hearing.
I think that's an improvement. My only question is whether my seatmates agree that that's an improvement.
And that's what I
we have.
pause and ask questions, yeah.
I believe so, yeah. I do. Like you said, very prescriptive and definitive.
But again, should something come up that maybe it doesn't quite fit somewhere, we will have an opportunity to adjust it after the hearing.
Right.
Right.
So the next item, that goes back to page number 4, and that will be section 7, authorization of local voters pamphlet. You had a conversation, the proposed language last week it was for you to consider delegating to the county manager the appointments of the pro and con committee. The board decided to keep that authority, so we eliminated the language, and that remains under your purview as a Board of County Commissioners. And also we added a little more clarification in the next paragraph. So if I may read this to you, it states, in accordance to RCW 29-832.280, the board shall, by February 28, 2020, formally appoint a committee to prepare arguments, advocate, and voters' approval of the measure, and shall formally appoint a committee to prepare arguments, advocate, and voters' rejection of the measure. The board shall, whenever possible, appoint persons known in favor of the measure to serve as the committee advocating approval, and shall appoint persons known to oppose the measure to serve on the committee advocating rejection. Each committee shall have no more than 3 members. If the board fails to make such appointments by February 28, 2020, the county auditor shall, whenever possible, make such the appointments. And that clarifies the intent, I believe, of the board directions last week that you like to keep this authority, and the additional language just gives you the flexibility in the event that perhaps you don't find any pro and con committee members.
So do you see where it says whenever possible in blue? And right underneath that line, there's a kind of, to the right of it says shall, and there's a comma.
Uh-huh.
I think that comma needs to be eliminated so that it's clear that whenever possible applies to both prongs.
Yes, yeah, and that was the intent. Whenever possible applies for the pro and con.
Yeah, so we got to eliminate that shall, comma, or else it's ambiguous.
Okay.
Good technical piece.
So with that revision, I believe that those are the two changes the board requested based on the draft that we submitted to you. So this, for your consideration, is for you to, again, consider setting the public hearing for the public to comment on this particular proposal for Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019, 5:30 in the afternoon on room 152, which is the one on the first floor. Just the event, and the event that you may have significant public testimony, perhaps. On this.
Okay, any comments on this?
No, I'm good.
I like the changes, thank you. And that will be set for the 22nd of October at 5:30. Anything more on that section at all, on that subject?
I guess I'm curious, we're going to set that today on the 1st of October? Is today the 1st?
Yeah.
No, for the 22nd of October.
But we're setting
Yes.
it today.
But we're setting it for a 10-day, we're exempting and saying 10 days, but
Yeah.
we're actually doing it in 20 days.
Well,
21
if you
days.
look, it's right on the edge.
It's so close, is that
It's
what
right on the edge.
thought is?
So if we publish that today, it's probably within
Okay,
19
that's
days.
fine. I just,
Yeah.
Any more on that one? Okay. That was 5B. Then move into our commissioner reports and county manager, and then we adjourn and move right into a public hearing this afternoon regarding Public Works updates to Thurston County Code.
Yeah, Commissioners, this afternoon, you will be receiving public testimony related to changes of the Thurston County Code, Chapter 15.20, and that is, it speaks about apprenticeship requirements on public works projects. This particular proposal is considering to increase the apprenticeship percentage from 10% to 15% of total labor hours for projects of $1 million and above related to public works.
Yes, sir.
is there any reason we can't include that last sentence you just said?
It is included on the actual motion.
Oh, it is. On the 1 million?
You want to add the, yeah, we
Yeah, I
can add
just
the
want
one.
to add the 1 million because, I think it clarifies something for the public is all.
However, this afternoon, I may recommend the board just to close the public hearing. I believe the staff wants to change the additional proposals on the ordinance. This is Tim Wilson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager, Public Works. Yes, it was brought to our attention last week that there should be a line in there stating that federal projects are exempt. This is a state-approved apprenticeship program, so we will need to add some verbiage, so we wouldn't be able to move forward with adopting the ordinance at this point, so we'll just move to close the meeting or recommend that you move to close the public hearing afterwards.
And considering that we cannot change the ordinance while it's under the public comment period, then the next step is for you to take public testimony, close the public hearing, and then we'll present the small revisions for your consideration before approving.
Will they hear that this afternoon?
I'm sorry?
Will they hear that this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Exempt because law requires them to be, or where is this coming from?
That's how I understand it. Our financial manager made the point last week that a federal project would be exempt from this. It's a state program.
But if I may, federal funded projects have a different type of requirements. And they have what they call DBEs, is the business disadvantage. So they have other different programs they will have to meet. And those requirements under federal law are stated by statewide. For instance, at least from my past experience, the state usually meets those requirements at the state level on their projects. But when the state is not able to meet those federal requirements, then pass a certain percentage to the state, so to the local jurisdictions. So although it may appear to be exempt, but the federal projects, they have other different requirements that perhaps parallel this particular action.
So are you saying this is an oversight from, I mean, because this ordinance, we're not creating a new ordinance. We're just changing a number in it. This ordinance is already on the books, and we're not, and we're leaving it verbatim. We're just
Right.
changing the 10 to 15. So you're saying this is something that should have been in there from whatever year it was passed? I think it was 10 or
Yeah.
15 years ago?
Yeah.
That's how it appears, yes.
In 10, 15 years ago, perhaps the federal regulations were not in place either. So there's an opportunity just to clean the books.
Okay. Well, I mean, disadvantaged business, I mean, those are not parallel to apprenticeship requirements, in my opinion. So that's not a good argument, but I'll look more carefully at it before we have to take action.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Gary.
Tim, do you know the answer? How does that affect those projects that are partially funded by federal dollars, partially funded by state dollars, partially funded by county dollars? Is there some kind of a formula that you have to divide that out? Or is that a legal question we might have to look at before we make that change?
I'm not aware of that. The language that is in there saying any public works project that is estimated to cost more than $1 million.
I know, but
But
if we do get,
to answer your question, as soon as there is a federal dollar, one federal dollar, and any particular project, all the requirements apply.
okay, good enough.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
And then we will close that public hearing, and that ends the meetings, BoCC meetings for the day. So let me find the drafted, here it is, the draft agenda. Let's cover that next. The draft agenda for the BoCC meeting of next Tuesday, October 8th, 2019. We call the meeting in session at 2 o'clock. Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Menser. Approval of the agenda and board meeting minutes. And move right into presentations. First one by the auditor on Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
I have a correction on the age. I noticed that item 5B disappeared when I printed the agenda, so I need to
Look at that.
give you a new October 8th agenda.
We're trading?
You can just,
Just throw, okay, get rid of that.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. All right, so the first presentation is a proclamation on Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Yes, Commissioners, for your consideration will be for you to consider October as a Cyber Security Awareness Month in Thurston County. Mary Hall, the county auditor, will be coming before you and provide you with some background related to this particular proclamation.
All right, anything? All right, the next one is the proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
So that's where you have the opportunity to wear pink,
Purple,
purple, pink, purple,
TV purple.
purple. And I missed my colors. And this, Christy Peters, the Chief of Staff for the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, will be here with many others. They will be give you some background as to the importance for the board to consider proclaiming the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is a yearly event, is well attended, and certainly is a good cause, at least from my perspective.
Okay, anything on that proclamation?
I guess I'm just curious, a lot of times and maybe it's on our calendar, that 100-man deal, is that coming up this month? Or
Yes.
We usually participate in that.
We have a public hearing at this,
Yeah.
I purchased a ticket, but we have a public hearing now at the same time as that event.
Wait a minute.
It was October 22nd, I believe. right?
15th,
15th.
Does the public hearing start at 3 or 5, do you know?
5:30, I think. It's right in the middle of it. Is it?
Really? Okay, well,
Aw,
we could probably make a donation to a good cause, maybe.
already have.
But that is a private invitation
Yeah,
from a nonprofit
I just
to
hadn't
you
heard
and all
anything
of
about
us.
it
Yeah.
on my calendar yet. So.
Wow. That's why we have vice chairs, right? All right, then we're moving into opportunity for the public to address the board.
And just, if I may, Commissioner Zahn,
Certainly you may.
I will not be in attendance next Tuesday, the whole day. I will be attending a conference, so I will be
Okay.
missing the October 8th meeting, so Robin Campbell will be sitting on my behalf.
All right, thank you. It might be premature for the public comment as well as the county manager's update,
Yep.
unless you're aware of anything.
No.
And at this point in time, we have consent item A, the auditor's voucher list, and we'll go through that this next week. And then it takes us to department items, and agenda item number 4, Public Works, setting a public hearing for the 6-year transportation improvement program for 2020 to 2025.
Under RCW 3681-121, it's very prescriptive on every county and every county engineer across the state needs to submit on a yearly basis the transportation improvement program in front of the Board of County Commissioners. It's that presented to you 2 weeks ago, and this is also RCW 3681-121 requires to hold a public hearing for you to hear public testimony related to the proposed improvements included on the transportation improvement program for 2020 to 2025. And this proposal is for October 22nd, 2019 at 3 in the afternoon in this room. In considering the dates that you may consider taking an action, we need to add the waiver of the 20 days. Because if you set the public hearing on the 8th and it's proposed for the 22nd, there's an additional item that you need to consider.
That's the 10-day issue, right?
Yeah.
Anything further on that one?
No.
Agenda item number 5, Public Health Social Services, the Criminal Justice Treatment Account Local Plan.
If I may, just to be clear, if we go back to the next item, this is a proposal for you to consider waiving the 20 days, but if you don't feel comfortable waiving the 20 days, we can push the public hearing within the 20 days. This is a staff's proposal for your consideration, so please don't feel bound to go with the waiver of 20 days. There's some code requirements that we would like to propose for you to consider, such as the ones you may be taking action this afternoon. But some of this, please feel free to tell us that you want to hold the 20 days and we just change the date.
Here's an idea. I'll ask my seatmates. Thoughts, opinions?
This is not, I don't know that it's controversial, but it's certainly not a small amount of information. It's a lot of information. So if a public member of the public really wanted to dive in, they would probably need the additional time on this one. I mean, it's a meaty document.
Yeah, so then you would set it, a week later or something
Yeah,
like that,
it will be
right?
probably the end of October or maybe early
And you're
November.
not up against any timeframes
I
that
don't
you're
believe
aware
we
of?
have any deadlines because the result of the public hearing will be for you, they will roll into the budget approval. And the budget approval is coming up for you actually at the end of October. I think that's the sense of urgency because we need to align. So let me double check. If there is an opportunity to slide this into later, we'll do so. But if it's related to the budget, then we may want to keep it
Okay.
with the waiver of 20 days.
Is that all right with you? It's all
20
right with
days,
me.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the CJTA local plan, 5A.
Yeah, and let me take you back, items 5A and 5B, somewhat related. And particularly to to Commissioner Hutchins and Commissioner Edwards, you may recall, probably not, last year, the state provides funding for criminal justice treatment account, what we call the CJTA. In that process, usually the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization was the one who was receiving the dollars and managing that account. When at that point the state asked whether the county would like to continue supporting the BHO managing that account, the BHO at that point said they don't want to do that. It was not necessarily related to their activities as a separate organization. The result of that action is the board decided to allocate the management of this account to the Public Health and Social Services. So that has been in place since, I believe, early 2017. Oh,
Summer 2018.
18.
okay, summer 2018. Thank you. See.
This is state money that,
Yeah. So, and the purpose of this is the county Public Health and Social Services receive an annual allocation of $239,327, and again on the Criminal Justice Treatment Account. Funding from the State of Washington Healthcare Authority. This funding must be spent on substance use disorder treatment and recovery support services for individuals involved in the criminal justice system. And that's very prescribed by law. Then this particular allocation needs to be done by a formal, what they call a CJTA, which is the Criminal Justice Treatment Account panel. The Thurston County has this panel, which is comprised of representatives from Superior Court, Drug Court, Public Defense, the prosecuting attorneys, the Sheriff's Office, and a substance use treatment provider should be part of that, this panel. The panel met and decided in September 2018 and developed 5 objectives to how this money should be implemented. One is a substance use disorder assessment when requested by a defendant's defense attorney. Number 2, treatment and related services for individuals involved in drug court. Number 3, medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorder in Thurston County Jail. Number 4, parenting classes for CJTA-eligible individuals.
That was parenting classes?
Yeah. And number 5, other substance use disorder treatments for justice-involved individuals as resources are allowed. Carrie Hennon is the manager of the treatment sales tax account, and she's here to answer any questions you may have related to this particular proposal.
so we're being asked to sort of bless these 5 objectives that have been developed by the panel, that's the concept?
And accept the money, $239,000.
Yes.
Carrie, what's the difference between
Yeah,
the
questions,
first
I
and the
do.
5th that he described? They sounded similar to me.
Yes, so good morning, Carrie Hennon, Program Manager. Just to be clear, yes, I'm the Treatment Sales Tax Program Manager. This is an entirely separate funding stream from the state. Similar uses, but slightly different. So the first is simply assessments. So does this person need an SUD, a substance use disorder assessment? The 5th is the panel, the members of which Ramiro mentioned, and that's prescribed in statute, who's on the local CJTA panel, wanted to leave a little flexibility in spending this resource. So that 5th use would be broader SUD treatment, substance use disorder treatment, and could go out through the kind of existing treatment provider network. The objective here was to make sure we've cast a wide enough net to make sure we can fully utilize this resource.
I've got questions. Do you have any? You done
Well, have we had a prior briefing about this whole thing?
Yeah, I
You alluded to something maybe a year ago, or?
That was a year ago when the board decided to move this funding from the
From the
BHO
BHO.
to the county. That's what I'm referring to, just to give you a historical perspective of the source of the funding. And we do have on your agenda later today where Carrie can dive even a little further, mainly related to item number 5B.
But we
Did
haven't
you
had,
want
I
to hold
mean, we're
this whole
talking about,
discussion for later?
If you like, you can probably, for at your discretion, to hold this conversation until later on the agenda, because I do have an item specifically for this item.
I would like to have a little more information on
5A
this
and
myself.
5B.
Where would you put it on here? Where's that with the?
He's looking at number 2.
Number two.
Criminal justice, oh, there we go, okay. Yeah, because I've got several questions.
I have several answers.
But we don't have a lot of time. And we got other people waiting.
You want to hold them? You want to hold it until
Well, I
this?
think we have other people waiting. We should.
Let's do that,
That's fine with me. As we get to it.
yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Sticking around then?
Yep.
Thanks, Carrie. So that'll put 5A and 5B on hold. Hit the pause button. Agenda item number 6 is the county manager and the commissioners and such, and then we adjourn and move right into the Board of Health, and we already covered that agenda for next week. So that takes care of that agenda, next Tuesdays. Proclamations and awards. La Bonita Bomar.
Good morning, La Bonita Bomar, Clerk of the Board. Under proclamations, I do not have any awards this week. Under proclamations, we have already reviewed today's proclamation, Walk to School, from the Public Health and Social Services Department, and from the Emergency Services Department, Kurt Harden, Thurston County Flood Awareness Week. Next week, we'll be having 2 proclamations, one for Cyber Security Awareness Month with Auditor Mary Hall, and as you have heard, Domestic Violence Awareness Month with the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Other than those proclamations that you have in your packet, that's all that I have for October.
Okay, questions on the proclamations?
No,
Anything?
sir. No, sir.
Take care of that. Thank you, Lala. Advisory boards and commissions.
Yes, we have one new application for the Planning Commission. This application was submitted to me from Commissioner Edwards' office, and Barry Halverson's application is included.
And that would be for District 2.
Two, correct.
For the sake of time, would you, I know all about this individual and know about his application, but would you folks like to have more time to review this so we can move ahead with it on our agenda?
Well, how long do this, I mean, I've heard a lot of people who are interested. How long do we keep this
Open.
nomination period open so that we know, I mean,
I think we should keep it open for a while. I don't think we'll do it right now, because
As
you
long
guys
as
haven't
you
even.
want.
Okay.
It really
It's
is-
open till
yeah, I mean, I
filled.
know we
really-
don't want to, this is important, we need, and if we've got
Really-
people, but I mean, if this is the first one that's come
Yes, it
in,
is.
I know, I've just heard buzz that there's quite a few people considering applying, so I'd want to give those folks time.
Absolutely, however you like to keep it open.
Whatever
It's
seems
really up to
reasonable
you.
to
Yeah.
these guys.
That's fine. It'd just be open till filled, I would imagine, so.
Yeah, maybe I can suggest have it open for next month, and then as applications are received, we'll bring this to your attention, and at some point, you will have the opportunity to review all the applications.
Perfect.
That's fine.
Thanks.
And you know this individual, Halverson?
I do. He's very active in the community, been involved in the lakes and water quality issues. Retired military officer. He's got quite a background in this type of thing. So
Okay.
All right, great.
And the other application in the packet is Judy Stratton, and I have not heard back from area agency as of yet.
I believe that was cancellation there on the timing on the meeting, so.
Yep, that's all that I have today.
Good, thank you. That takes us to the Pio Check-In.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. Just have a couple updates for you this morning. This week, the website RFP review team is going to meet. We received six applicants for the new website. We're hoping to narrow that down to the top 2 or 3, and then invite them in to do some demos and have all the web coordinators invited to those to provide us with some feedback. So that's moving forward, which is really exciting. I'm working with Commissioner Hutchings to plan the 3rd off-site meeting for probably late November. We're finalizing up some details on that, and then we'll start promoting that. And then we received the first cut of Commissioner Mentzer's Thurston County Connection for October. Neil is doing an initial review of that, and then once they make the edits to that, then they'll get it to you guys for review. And then lastly, we installed a new streaming device in this room yesterday, and so hopefully that's going to resolve some of the issues that we have with live streaming these meetings. Seems to be working fine this morning, so that's great.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Any questions for Megan?
No.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Where are we with microphones?
So we actually have a quote in from a company to kind of talk about this room a little bit. We're going to be going and doing a on-site kind of review of somewhere that has a system that they're recommending. So that's happening next week, and so I'll have a little bit more information after that.
Okay, even the disc mics or something, passing 1 or 2 mics around the table is
Yeah, so we're
so unprofessional.
I am definitely working on that.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
So the next thing is our few media items. So we're going to go ahead. It's almost 10 o'clock. We'll take a break.
For your consideration, Commissioner, the county treasurer is here to speak about item number 1 on your agenda, tax title.
That's a quickie, though, isn't it? Is that a quick
And
one?
Because he has another matter to attend. So if you consider give him the floor and walk you through.
Let's do that then. Come on up, Jeff. And as you're coming up, you are not limited by time. I mean, your own time constraints, perhaps.
So, Commissioners, as a matter of introduction, this is a follow-up to an agenda item that you had for your consideration to dispose of a property located on Cooper Point. Is 1.34 acres located at Cooper Point and 67th Avenue Northwest. And the purpose of this action for your consideration is to allow the county treasurer to go through a bidding process to dispose of this property, who has been in tax title since, I believe, 1980s. The initial bid proposal was about $28,000. As a result of that, I believe the commissioners would like to hear additional information from the county treasurer because perhaps it was some feedback the property may be worth more than the $28,000. I briefly have a conversation with the county treasurer, Jeff Gadman, and I think there is perhaps a difference between county-owned property, which probably we own the property and fee, and the other is tax title, because we just hold and trust for the citizens of the county. And perhaps the process as to how we surplus this property could be different. So the county treasurer is here to walk you through as to how he concluded on this particular proposal, and then give you the opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you. County Treasurer Jeff Gadman, I really appreciate your accommodating my schedule this morning. I've got a meeting that's going to require me to navigate northbound I-5 traffic, and that could be. I brought a partner with me today.
Good morning, Eric Sullivan, Revenue Officer for the Thurston County Treasurer's Office, and I kind of handle all the
Good morning,
tax
Eric.
title. How you doing?
Fine, thanks.
So one of the things, to differentiate between county-owned property and tax title property, county-owned property is property the county has in fee. County's purchased it, county's condemned it, or it's been donated to the county, and the county holds that as ownership of that property. Tax title property is acquired through failure of property to go through the tax foreclosure bidding process. In other words, it was put up for auction, received no bids, and it ends up in what's called tax title. And tax title is defined as property that the county holds in trust for the taxing districts in which that property is located. So it's not taxed during the time that it's held in tax title, but it's beneficial to the county because the county is one of the taxing districts. And all the taxing districts affected by that property to try to get it into a taxable status again so that it continues to generate revenue. This particular property was acquired as tax title in 1984 when it failed to attract any bids at the tax foreclosure auction, and it's been sitting there ever since. So part of the tax title process, if somebody approaches my office and says, hey, I notice this is on the tax title list because it's on the website, I'd really like to buy this property. One of the first determinations Eric and myself have to make is the property practical to build on? You know, we're not saying it is buildable, or we're not saying it's definitely not buildable, but for all appearances, from the information we have, if we say it's not buildable, usually that's something like a 15-foot by 110-foot long strip. You know, it's not going to be practical to build on. In this case, this property has a decent shape for what appears to be a buildable parcel, and it's a good size, 1.34 acres. On the surface, it doesn't appear that there's anything adverse to building on it, which means that we can't say it's not buildable. The Planning and Building Department has issued an opinion that said, you know, as far as they're concerned, it might be buildable, and that's key, is it might be buildable. They haven't done a full project review, and they won't until somebody proposes something. It does have a slight slope to it, 10-foot drop in elevation from one side to the other. There is a wetland on the property adjacent, which the buffer affects this property. One of the most telling issues about this particular property is that it has really bad soil for on-site septic. And two properties immediately to the west, which were developed, and I don't have a date on those, I'm sorry. They have to ship their sewage off-site, so they've had to get easements on a property almost a quarter mile to the west of where they're located. So that adds significantly to the building cost. So in all of the analysis, the fact that somebody chose not to pay taxes on this to the point where it went to a tax foreclosure auction, the fact that it didn't receive any bids at a tax foreclosure auction, and the fact that it's been sitting there languishing on the tax title inventory for 35 years leads me to believe that there's some defect on this property that we're not able to see in any of the paperwork that we have available now. My appraisal background tells me in a property that appears on the surface to be desirable, and it is in a desirable location, to not have attracted development at this point, there's something that we just can't see yet. We do have a buyer that's willing to come in at the opening bid. By not being able to declare it unbuildable, we want to throw it out for public auction and see if anybody else might be interested. It could sell for considerably more than the $28,000, but we do know, or the $28,600. We do know that we have a bidder at that price.
Is it because of the Capausen silt loam soil, or that's why it's not suitable for septic?
Yeah, well, we don't believe it's suitable for septic. We can't declare that without a full study. But that particular soil is clay soil, and it is shallow, or it's shallow underneath the topsoil, so it's right there. And basically, it is an impermeable type of soil. The water just kind of floats on the top. It's very, very difficult for any kind of infiltration or filtration. And so most health departments will not approve property with those types of soils for on-site sewage unless you build an extremely expensive on-site system. I'm not sure of current technology if that would be allowed or not, but that's going to add considerably to development costs, which is going to reduce the amount somebody's willing to pay for the property.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Just
You
like
do.
the tax assessment, assessor's page shows $106,000. So like, what is he not, what is the assessment process not doing that you're factoring in?
So one of the things with the assessor's office, they're not required to do a full investigation and appraisal on property that is tax exempt. They have that exclusion or that permission through RCW. So I'm not sure of the full extent of exactly what they've applied to this particular property because it is tax exempt. But they tend to concentrate more on the taxable properties which actually generate revenue.
Because I mean, if you look, like the printout that I have goes from 2010 to now, like about 10 years worth, and it changes every year, like substantially. So somebody's from the assessor's office is doing some work and coming up with a different value. I mean, it goes from 152 all the way down to 87 at one point. Now it's rising back up to 106. So somebody's figuring something out about that property. I mean, I guess just tracking the market, I guess, is what they're doing with that.
So it's been assigned codes in the assessor's office according to what it is, vacant land, according to where it's located, according to its size. I don't know if they've actually looked at that wetland buffer and applied anything with regard to that. I don't know if they've applied anything for the types of soils. Because it's exempt, nobody's paying attention to that value to protest that value if they believe it's out of line. So I can't tell you that, I will tell you that that value is accurate for the coding that has been placed on that by the assessor's office. I can't tell you if they've done a full investigation to get to that value.
I think that my sense was just the board, like there was concern about, I'm not an expert in this area, and I know a lot of people in the public aren't, because it's pretty technical stuff, and they, why are we selling a property that's, $106,000 for $28,000? Like, we're gonna get some, I think, questions about that. So I think that's the point of why we're trying to dig down into how we answer those questions.
And that is absolutely a fair question, and that's one of the reasons why my narrative talked about the potential defects on this property. There are known adverse conditions on this property, but we don't know the extent to how they would affect the value because that investigation hasn't been done. Like I said, with the assessed value on exempt properties, those aren't investigated for value as deeply as taxable properties are.
Go ahead, Gary.
I guess when this did come up, I went out and actually took a look at the property. And I just don't understand, my seatmate has already raised the issue about the assessed value versus what we're seeing on this coming through, the $28,000. Do you know how long ago there was some type of a buffer or septic review on that, or was there anything ever done officially by any of our staff?
To my knowledge, there's never been any investigation as to suitability for on-site septic.
Was there any checking in with any of the adjoining neighbors that might have an interest in this property? Was there any communication with any of those folks to see if they might be interested in this property?
Last year, a neighbor did come forward, and that's one of the reasons and how we found this information. So with tax title property, they kind of sit out there. We really don't go out and try to sell it. Most people do research and come to us and say, here's a piece of property, I'm willing to pay this much. So last year in 2018, an adjoining property owner did contact our office and said they may want to buy this property, but when they found that it could possibly be a practical buildable lot, then at that point, because they knew there were some buffers and they knew they didn't want to submit a bid because they knew it would have to go to an open auction. And if it goes to an open auction like this, it goes to the highest bidder. So that 28.6 is just the starting bid. But it could go up to, because it's an open auction, it could go up to 80,000, we don't know. But the one thing that you have to understand that whoever purchases it, that they're taking the risk of having to do all the research for septic, for the slope and everything. And that's one of the reasons we're saying that the starting bid should be at the 28.6, because that is a guarantee that the gentleman came forward this time stating that he's willing to pay for it. And he might even pay more, but that's up to him whether he wants it. So regardless, it will sell at least for that and get on the tax rolls. And then when it gets on the tax rolls, of course, it's taxable at that 106,000 assessed value. That's what's going to be multiplied by the levy rates that are going to the taxing districts. But our goal here is to get it out and get it back on the tax rolls.
So that 28.6 is what was proffered by the adjoining neighbor?
What's that? I'm sorry?
That 28.6, is that what was offered by the adjoining neighbor, or that's what we set that value at?
Well, we are required to set that value at whatever the bid amount was when it was attempted to sell at the original tax foreclosure. So back in 1984, that
back
was the
then.
amount and no one bid on it.
Oh, got it.
So with tax title, we can't accept anything less than that as a starting bid, the principal amount that we tried to sell it for when it went to tax
Okay.
sale. So that's why this became tax title. So it's been sitting there, and now all of a sudden people have an interest, but it's their job to tell us what they are willing to pay, and then it's our job to find out what route we go. And in this situation, because it's possibly practical to build on, the route we're required to go by state law is to take it to an open auction. And that open auction is what we're looking into doing, and that starting bid is
These levels.
exactly
So,
right there.
so I want to further comment too on the assessed value. So when I talk about the coding in the assessor's office, there's no implication there that they're not doing their job or their due diligence. They just may not be aware of any defects on this property. And because it's tax exempt and the status of the property, there's nobody calling the assessor's office and saying, hey, I don't think this is worth $100,000 or $110,000 or whatever. Which a lot of times, especially when it comes to soil conditions, that's how the assessor finds out sometimes about adverse conditions on property. This property owner calls and says, hey, did you know that topsoil is only 6 inches deep or only a foot deep, and I'm going to have to put my septic system a quarter mile away, which is going to cost me X amount of dollars. And at that point, then the assessor will take those numbers into account. Being tax title, nobody's paying attention to the assessed value. And in fact, because of its tax title status, there actually isn't any right to go and protest that assessed value because we don't own it. So, so like I said, the comments about the assessed value are, if that property was a perfect property according to how the assessor has it coded, I have no doubt that value is accurate. We have to advertise that it's going up for auction for 2 weeks prior to actually opening the auction. My experience watching property auctions, both private and public, over the years is that if a property, people do their due diligence if they're interested in a property. A property will sell very, very close to its maximum value at the point where the auction is opened up.
Go ahead, you still have the floor.
I think I need to clarify my question with an example. I had a citizen that came to me that had tried for years and years and years to build a house on a property. And the county continually told them, no, you can't build there. There's a wetland there. There's a seasonal creek that goes through that property. And that citizen always went to the assessor every year and asked for a reduction in value. Ended up having to go through the Board of Equalization every year. And every year the property was put back up to what the assessor thought the value would be, even though the Board of Equalization would give that person a break. Eventually that person felt that they needed to get rid of this property. It wasn't doing them any good anymore, and had that property about 30 years and sold it for half of the assessed value, stating it was just going to be a recreation lot. All the reasons had been given in the past over the years why you couldn't build on it. That lot, within 8 months, had been completely cleared. The creek had been moved. Everything had taken place so a house could be built. In fact, it was permitted and built. So that homeowner, that lot owner, took a loss substantially in selling it, and somebody was able to use the system through shenanigans or whatever, I'm not sure, to get something done. Therein comes my suspicion on this deal that we need to do our due diligence here to make sure that we retrieve as much money out of this lot for the citizens of Thurston County. In this case, we don't have an individual owner, but we end up getting money into our general fund. So the more we get when we sell it, the more benefit to the citizens overall. And that's where I'm going with this. So I would advocate, before we move forward on any sale, to have our own staff go over and take a look at that buffer. Have those folks that are involved in septic activities take a look at that. Make sure that we could have an engineered system, or we could not have an engineered system. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but some assurances so that a citizen buying it is willing to pay top dollar, if you will, because all of the citizens of Thurston County are beneficiaries when that happens. And if we don't get all this stuff done, then along comes somebody that knows the ropes, so to speak, and pulls a shenanigan on the taxpayers and ends up getting a $30,000 investment property that's really worth $150,000 according to the assessment that has been there in the past. So I am not in a hurry to sell this, and I want our own staff to take a look. These people are on staff anyway, so for them to take a few minutes to do some reviews, I don't think is a waste of their time and effort if we could get $100,000 instead of $30,000. So that's kind of where I'm at.
May I educate me? If that's the type of work and study and assessment that would be done or incumbent on the buyer, why would we take our staff time, well, they're here anyway, but yeah, we're paying them. They're still a resource that the citizens are paying for. And it won't take a few minutes. It's going to take an in-depth study. And we're doing it for an individual buyer, potential buyer. So we're expending citizen tax dollars to help a potential buyer of the property. So
Well,
I don't understand that. I understand get the most bang for our buck into our general fund, but now we're expending tax dollars to do that.
I guess the bottom line is I'm alleging that there is corruption at times in government, and something happened to that prior lot that I referred to. And if we had staff look into it, we would know for sure, is it a viable building lot or not? Is there value there or not? I don't think we ought to take a chance of selling it and find out that we sold it so cheap because it's got all these encumbrances on this property. I think we ought to figure that out. I think we owe that to the taxpayers that might benefit.
Okay. I cut Jeff off, the treasurer.
So I just, in reference to the lot that you gave an example of. So like you mentioned that the creek had been relocated, and so what's missing from your story is how much that buyer had to spend to perfect the ability of that property to be developed.
Yes,
Which would
I'm
definitely,
bypassing that.
definitely affect what a
Which-
buyer's willing to pay.
Okay, I want to point that out, because you bring that up. They spent nothing more to have that happen. Therein lies the problem.
Yeah, but in this particular case, we do have a preliminary statement from CPAD that says that the property may or may not be affected by wetlands, depending on the accuracy of the maps that we have available, that they have available. And that the soils that are there, they know what those soils cause, but they don't know for sure what the effect on development might or might not be until a full study is done. CPAD generally, in the interest of wise spending of tax dollars, will not, they want the person that owns the property to spend the money on a development proposal, and then they'll review the proposal to see if it meets the health requirements and the development requirements for that property. I don't know that they normally do that kind of deep investigation.
Go ahead, Ramel.
You brought up a couple things I didn't know. So one kind of easy thing to do, you talked about the two parcels to the west. So the parcel we're talking about, we're speculating it has the soil that's going to make septic not possible, but we don't know for 100% sure. And you're saying there's nobody there to challenge the tax assessment. Well, if we just move to the west, we've got two parcels where we know that what you're saying is correct, that they've got bad soil for septic and they're having to ship their, whatever you said, they're dealing with their septic issue. And we do have folks that would be challenging improper tax assessments. So we should be able to see what the tax assessments are for those two properties and see whether they've challenged, whether, we can sort of see whether or not the assessor's just tracking, along with those values, or whether there's been a different estimate. Am I making sense? Like, you can basically see, because the two parcels together are about the same size, the land values that the assessor is putting on those, knowing, with a citizen there to challenge, and knowing what the soil situation is, because it sounds like there are developments there, from what you say.
But if those properties have been developed, it
Yeah.
means the development defects have been corrected. So the property, the land value is not going to be relatable to this particular parcel. But now, having said all of this, one of the reasons why we come to the commissioners, if you guys think that there is another value that this needs to be put out for sale, that is your prerogative. That's one of the reasons why the process is set up the way it is. What you want to make sure is that whatever value you put it out there at makes sense from a market valuation standpoint. And, my issue, and the reason we're coming out with the $28,600, that's what's owed on the property. Not having a full appraisal in front of me, I don't have anything to base any other number on. I can't say, well, this is going to cost $30,000 for a property owner, so that's a $30,000 reduction in what that property will sell for. I don't have those benchmarks to come up with another number.
You're saying, though, that we can put it higher than 28 too, if we wanted to.
We can throw it out there for whatever number you want.
But Eric, I thought you said we had to put it at what the value was back in 1980.
Minimum.
Can't go less than that.
Minimum.
That's the minimum.
The minimum, right.
Right, and that's why this gentleman put forward, that's what he's willing to start. He's saying, okay, I'm willing to pay this much. And that's why we research it and say, now, is this practical to build on, or it's not? If it was not practical to build on, my AIS to you would be, it's not a buildable lot, we want to sell this as a private negotiation, and he's just going to pay it. He would never be able to do anything with it, he just wants to own a piece of property. And that's
Right.
kind of the criteria we're in right now. He has to do all the research and spend the money he might buy it at the live auction for $50,000 if there's bidders against him. But then he also has to put all the money into finding out the engineering costs for a septic, finding out where exactly he's gonna be able to put something, if at all, because of the buffer and the slope and the soil. So all that in consideration, that's another reason we're saying, well, at least we have somebody that's willing to buy this property. It'll get back on the tax roll, because you have to understand, that is the priority for the treasurer's office to do with tax title. So
I get that, but
yeah.
if the 28.6 is the minimum bid,
Right.
I'm understanding, or the minimum value, I'm understanding what I'm hearing, though, is with a new assessment, we can set a different price. Not true or true?
You could set a different price after we adjourn. You can say, we want a starting bid of 60,000. And so when I put this up at auction, because that's what you requested, we can start a bid at whatever price it
Okay.
is. The point we're trying to make, though, is people will research these, and we may not get any bidders at all, and we're back at square one.
Okay,
With
Ramiro,
it not
you've been
going
trying to
up
get in.
Yeah, although that I not necessarily disagree that perhaps this property has a higher value in the market, but at least my concern is to have staff spending time on a tax title property. Remember, the staff is funded by a fee base. It's not funded by general fund. So every staff that is here in CPED is public health as well. When they receive an application, they receive a fee, and that's how their ways they're funded. Also, I don't necessarily agree that perhaps will be an easy assessment, because it may require spending some time, because if the county gets to the point and said, yes, this is a buildable lot, yes, we can put a septic system in here, and the property goes up for sale under those conditions, without doing enough research, and in fact that is the case, it's a huge risk to the county, because a property owner will come in here and you said, you told me, county, that I can build a house, you told me, county, that I can build a septic system, and when the property owner goes to the details of the engineer, may not be able to. That's a risk back to the county. And that is, I like to provide my perspective before you make a decision, because that is, I believe, is a very slippery slope to go down.
And how many more of these do we have out there where another potential buyer may say, hey, you did it for this guy, come on in and have an assessment and do an assessment for me?
Tax title properties, we have over 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and they go back to the 1900s, so that's how long they've been sitting.
So go ahead, Eric, and then I'll get back to the commissioner.
I do have one thing just to kind of clarify on that, and also when it comes to tax foreclosures, tax title, it's all buyer beware. This is another reason that we don't come out and make promises because of that fact. It's been on the tax title, so when people want to actually bid on these, it's their responsibility and their job to make sure they're purchasing what they want for the purposes that they need.
Go ahead.
Okay, maybe we typically don't do this. I contend this is not a typical lot, and there is a precedent that's been set about spending money ahead of time, and that's the courthouse complex. The hundreds of thousands of dollars that the taxpayers have spent into this proposal moving forward with the courthouse, if the bond issue was to pass next year, is going to be reimbursed back to those funds that are paying for that right now. So we're taking a chance oftentimes on whatever we do. So I don't think it's too much to take a chance to get a definite answer one way or the other. I mean, we could go back to, well, let's just see what happens, but then we don't get near the money into the coffers for the benefit of the taxpayers that we could get if we would put a little effort into making sure, hey, yeah, it's buildable, you'll have to do this, or it's not buildable, and you can make a camping lot out of it. I will contend that the party that I referred to on that early, in my opening remarks on this, that party actually blemished the title when that property was sold and said this is only going to be able to be a camping lot. But yet, that person went through whatever shenanigans needed to be done. There was a county culvert across that road into that property there was a creek there that was moved, and as far as the expenses incurred by the buyer were none. I checked into that, didn't have to go through anything. How did that all happen? I guess we'll never know. That was done in the past, but it just goes to show you that things do happen. You can call it corruption or mistakes or coincidences, but things do happen. I want to get the best buy I can for the taxpayers. That's all I'm interested in.
Just a couple thoughts. I mean, I guess in theory, the auction process should, work. If it works right, it will get the true market value because folks will bid against each other and pay the amount that the high bidder pays. So we could trust that process. I guess that's one option. The one thing that you've explained to me that I didn't know before today was that this 28 or whatever it is, $28,000, that's not an estimation of this person's finances or what they think the property is worth. They're just saying, I would go, and that's based on the historical and what the legal minimum bid has to be. So that's opens the possibility that, the minimum bid could be quite a bit higher and still be effective. And that's where I can see where the information Commissioner Edwards is looking for would help us figure out where to set that. Because I don't know where to set it. I mean, it would feel very random for me to go, 50,000, I haven't even seen the property, frankly. I've seen the Google Earth and I know exactly where it is. I live up that direction, but, I could walk the property and not understand anyway because this is complex. And you're talking about slope and soils and abilities. So I don't know the answer. Those are just two observations from this discussion.
One of the things, since this has been on the tax title list for 35 years, why are we just now getting somebody that is interested in purchasing this property?
At 28, or
At 28, yeah.
potentially. That's interesting. Yeah, a good point.
I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, at this point, I will ask the board as to provide direction. You request to take this item out of your consent agenda a couple of weeks ago, and you requested to have the treasurer to come give you additional perspective. At this point, I will ask the board what will be the pleasure of the board on this item.
Go ahead, Gary.
I guess my preference would be that we take this off until we find out more answers about what could we possibly do to make the best benefit for the taxpayers. I don't have that answer yet, and I think there's enough money at stake here that it's worth finding out.
I think I'm fine with that approach. I kind of want to chew on. I learned a lot just today.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to think about it. And I guess the question is, how will we get the information that you're hoping that we need? And because there seemed to be a difference of opinion about whether staff should do, anything. And I don't know what I think about that.
My suggestion would be that we have a separate work session about this particular topic. It's a fairly sizable amount of money, and I think we ought to look into it with a work session, not here where we're trying to figure out something where we're running through an agenda, jamming everything else up.
That's a good point, that there's a lot to chew on. Then there's no time constraint for us on this property, is there? We're not under any
No,
gun.
I mean, you always run
Right.
the risk of the buyer getting scared off. The guy that contacted us, you do run the risk of him being scared off and saying, I'm out, this is too much work. But that's anytime you're dealing with any of these issues. And I want to say, I definitely appreciate your concerns, because I, started with the same concerns. My gut instinct is telling me there's something with this property that we can't see that the buying public has.
Well, and if CPED's already looked at it, I'm not interested in spending or investing any more county dollars into doing that for the buyer. And I'm sure they're not sitting over there across the hall watching us on streaming thinking, yeah, we got nothing to do. I hope they give us something to do. Because they're really busy. And I do trust the bidding process, but we do have I think another session on this would be
Yep.
very valuable.
And I think that is a really good idea.
Okay,
So
thank
what
you.
is it that you'd like to hear on the next work session? And more than what you've heard today, I just want to make sure that I bring the information that you're looking for, because I'm a little bit confused as to what the next steps the board is asking me to do.
Well, I would ask what more information you would like to have, and then I would ask the treasurer and Eric, what more can you bring us? So let me ask and see what we're looking for.
Well, I guess if you want to really dig into it, you want to take this piece of property that I'm referring to that took place about 4 years ago and find out how those shenanigans took place, how that citizen lost all that money, how that process went through at no additional cost to the buyer. And let's fret out a little bit about how corruption does exist in government, because I truly believe that.
Well, I'm sorry, I will not be able to go back to the example that you provided, Commissioner.
We're
My
not going to sign
position is
another
not
elected.
to find
Well,
any potential corruption, as you stated.
I have to say, I don't want to rush into this, and I feel it is worth looking into and not getting in a hurry.
I'm
No,
not
but I
trying
understand
to,
that. But aside from assigning an elected staff more work to do on a 4-year-old deal, what more information do you need on this to move forward with this?
That's all I'm asking. I'm
I
not,
want to know why we can't move forward, and I think that's why we need a work session to argue these points out amongst us for a period of time, I mean, more than 10 minutes.
Well, we've already spent almost 50. But
I know we
my question
have.
is, what more do you need on this particular piece, rather than just arguing among us? We can do that.
I want to know why we can't move forward with assessing this property. It's worth it to assess it. We're spending money from a fund on the courthouse. Why can't we spend a little money to see if we can't get a better deal for the taxpayers? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay. What more
So
information you
I
need?
guess I'm just going to myself take some time to look at the tax assessment history on the surrounding parcels to see if that tells me anything. And then I wouldn't mind to hear maybe from CPED with a low investment of time, what they could potentially glean, what we could get for how much time spent along the lines of what Commissioner Edwards is asking. I'm not sure if it's beyond the scope of what I would be comfortable with, but I wouldn't mind to hear Josh or one of his staff kind of assessing that.
Okay.
And then I'd probably be ready to go.
And can we get a 2019 assessed value, or would it be not much different than what you've already proposed? That's the question I would
What do you
have.
mean?
An assessment of the property, what its true value is.
You're not going to be able to do that without
All the studies.
having somebody go through
Okay.
an appraiser, doing everything that they're supposed to do. And
Okay.
the coding and stuff. Like I said, one of the challenges that the assessor's office has with this particular property, there isn't anybody there to challenge the value. There's nobody there to come to them and say, hey, did you realize, there's a 100-foot square space that's actually usable on this property.
All
Is
right.
the assessor, I don't know, I don't want to overstep, but you said the assessor wouldn't be looking at specific defects because this has been in tax exempt status. Does the fact that now we're considering removing it from that status, could that mean the assessor could do a more in-depth look at some of the specific defect issues that you've outlined?
So when the assessor's office goes out there, and this is me speaking from experience, we look at the surrounding areas, right? We look at a physical look at the property. If it doesn't appear to be anything adverse, we're not going to code anything adverse. If we know there's a wetland, and a lot of times the assessor's office doesn't find out about a wetland being located on a property until the property owner calls them and says, hey, did you know? Because they're not obvious. The assessor's office is not walking every square inch of every property. Certainly not taking shovels out and digging into the soil to find out what types of soils are out there, because a lot of times the assessor's office doesn't find out about the on-site septic issues or lack of ability until somebody gets a perk test done, because that's when you've dug into the soils deep enough to really realize what might or might not be there. So it's not You know, like I said, it's not that the assessor's office isn't doing their due diligence, because they absolutely are. It's just that there hasn't been anybody to challenge that value or to question if that value is accurate or not.
Go ahead.
So as a matter of clarification, I was just asking clarification from the board as to what is it you want us to do next. So I'm not here to challenge any of your perspectives or your opinions. I'm just asking for direction. So so what I got is you would like to have another work session, and you would like to have CPID to have another look at this particular property, and we'll bring that information before you at a later date.
And what it might cost time-wise to have them do more in-depth study? Is that what you were asking for?
Yeah, I was sort of saying, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't saying that they need to go look at the property, I was saying, I'd like to know, what could they determine, or what could they report on, given what they know now, for X number of investment of hours? I just don't have a sense of that. What they would need to do to give us some new piece of useful information.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for before we send them off to do something.
I'm
Okay,
good with that.
Good. There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't think this would take long. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time and thought-provoking questions.
Thanks, Jeff.
And now we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at, let's do 5 minutes to 11, a little bit longer, 5 minutes to 11. 10:55, we'll be back. Welcome back to the action-packed agenda-setting work session for October 1, 2019. And we're going to move right into now the Thurston Conservation District public hearing wrap-up.
Yeah, Commissioners, thank you. This is a follow-up to the public hearing you held last Tuesday, September 24, 2019 at 5:30 in the afternoon, in which you received public testimony related to a proposal to implement rates and charges for the Thurston Conservation District. The proposal in which the public provided public testimony included the recommendations the Thurston Conservation District Board of Supervisors provided to you, which includes a 5-year period from 2020 to 2024. Leading to the public hearing, we received 28 written testimonies from the public, of which 20 were in support of the 5 years. 6 were in support of the Conservation District rates and charges without specifying the number of years. 1 was in support of 1 year, and 1 was in opposition. On the public hearing, on September 24, 2019, you received 15 verbal testimonies. And again, those may be a repetition from those who have provided written testimonies as well, but you receive 15 public testimonies on the public hearing, in which the majority of them, 13, were in support of the rates and charges for the 5 years. 1 was supportive of the rates and charges with a recommendation to put on the ordinance requirements on how the election is conducted that perhaps may be out of your purview. And 1, there was in opposition to the rates and charges as a whole. So in gist, you received overall 27, 30, 41 in support, I believe, and 2 in opposition, and 1 with a proposed revision, not necessarily in opposition. So before I will ask the board to provide direction, the next steps will be for you to have a conversation, give you the opportunity to talk among yourselves as to what you've heard as a result of the public hearing.
And at what point are we going to be deciding this issue?
So obviously you need to take a formal action on a board meeting at 2 in the afternoon, in which you will consider approving an ordinance implementing the rates and charges. So after the conversation you have today, I will ask you 2 questions to provide direction, not necessarily to provide a vote. The direction will be whether you like to entertain bringing an ordinance to implement rates and charges for 2020. That will be direction number 1. And direction number 2 will be for how many years. And again, you have all the ability to change that all the way leading to your official vote on a board meeting.
Okay. So perspective and who we've talked with, what we've heard, and then answer those 2 questions, the ordinance on rates and charges, and then number 2, how long, the duration.
And providing direction as to how I need to bring the ordinance for your attention.
Go ahead.
Me?
You want to start?
Sure.
I always try to get you first and then go to the vice chair and then,
Okay.
and then me.
Good enough. I always get to go first. That's great. So I really appreciated the public hearing. We got to hear from a lot of farmers that actually were able to give tangible descriptions of how Conservation District work has helped them. So that was really useful. For me, I know the Conservation District came with a 5-year proposal. I'm going to take a page from Commissioner Edwards' book when when we were doing our budget negotiation, and he said, sheriffs didn't ask for deputies, but this is something I feel really strongly about. It's a need. I'm going to take my commissioner's prerogative. I'm going to take my commissioner's prerogative. I want to fund Conservation District for 10 years. Prior to 2018 and losing funding, they had a 10-year funding cycle. That is typical. They're not a new organization. They've been here since 1947. We know exactly what they do, how they're structured, and what they provide to the community. I think they asked for 5 years because they were, my speculation is they were nervous because they didn't get a massive vote of support last year when we only funded them for 1 year. And I'll exempt Commissioner Hutchings from that because I was at the meetings and he advocated for a longer period of funding. But the board only funded them for a year despite advice that they, it's hard to even evaluate. I think it was Ramiro who was basically advocating saying at least 2 years because you can't really even see where you are with the programs implementing the changes you're trying to make after a year. But yet the board only gave them the year, which I think was sort of an undercutting of confidence in the Conservation District, which probably, in my view, led them to scale back their request, not knowing where the board was going to land. But I see no reason on earth not to do a 10-year funding cycle for this organization. It's what they've had in the past. They're doing good work. They have a clean audit finding. The supervisors that were causing dysfunction are long gone. And I would like us to make a statement that we support our Conservation District and fund them for 10 years.
Okay, you have nothing to add? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. On the first issue of whether we want to fund it or not, I want to get that off the table because I do want to fund it.
Yeah.
And I think the Conservation District does a lot of good work. I guess the problem I've got here is I've been here longer than anybody else, and I've seen the issues of the past history of the Conservation District. And I guess I would ask anybody in the public that has a concern as to what I'm talking about, or maybe they haven't been here for as long as I have. There's been a very checkered history over the last 20 years of Conservation District activities, elections, and expenditures. So those articles you can find in our paper of record, the Olympian. There's a lot of them. It goes back, all the way back. So as far as the funding mechanism itself and the period of time, the one thing I really learned from the hearings that we had and comments that came in was the stability issue of funding. That I can see for those entities that would be giving grants, maybe they would be concerned about that on the stability of funding as we have seed money that moves forward. The problem is, even though we've got a board now that seems to be going pretty good, getting everything in order, if you will, doing very good work, we've got this kind of, I'll call it a crazy election cycle involving the Conservation District that most citizens out there have no idea of what takes place with the voting process on the Conservation District. That's outside of our purview, if you will, and that needs to be worked on. But that's a big piece of the problems that have been in existence in the past. And I'll say in the past because the immediate past, if you will, in the last year, and the present, everything's going well. I think everything's moving right along the way it should move along. But the reality is that can change. And my concern is that we do need oversight. The only option that this board has as far as oversight is putting a limit on how long those dollars can, how many years those dollars can be collected. We've already agreed that it's a good process, good use of tax dollars. But if we set it at, say, 10 years, there's no pulling back from that. For the next 10 years, there's millions and millions and millions of dollars that will go through tax money, through the Conservation District, and we will have absolutely no say on if it's being properly spent. Where if we set it at 2 years, and here's why I'm going for 2 years, is because of the stability issue. I really think there's merit to that stability issue. But in 2 years, we can review, and it takes, I don't know what it takes us, an hour to have adequate oversight for millions of taxpayer dollars. And we can't even tell you how many million, especially as we move forward with all the salmon enhancement projects that may or may not happen, and the seed money that this fund might be able to bring in, because we've got a history here in Thurston County of doing very good work in the salmon restoration process. And I'd like to see that continue. But I would like to make sure that we are coordinating our efforts with the Conservation District and the county. And the only way that I can see we can really stay on track, should there be changes to the board that maybe are detrimental, good group doing things now, but maybe in the future, that won't be in place. If we give them 10 years, we have no oversight for 10 years. We give them 2 years, they can continue their good work, and we can have some oversight. So I was initially going to opt for 1 year myself, so I could continue a little tighter scrutiny on the oversight. But recognizing the stability of funding and how that could be a detrimental issue if we don't have that stability when they're putting out for grants. I think that's a reasonable concession from my point of view. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think we do have, even though it's not our responsibility, we're putting this on the taxpayers. And so because we're putting this on the taxpayers to pay this, and it's millions of dollars by the time seed money is put in place, I really think it behooves this board to make the more prudent and safe decision of giving the Conservation District 2 years, let them come back with what type of good work have they been doing. And then we can just renew it. It's not an issue, no issue whatsoever to renew this. That way we can have some oversight should things go amiss. And anybody that hasn't read about the last 20 years of the Conservation District, I would encourage them to go take a look at what's going on in the real world, what has went on in the past. Because if we don't review the past, we might not get it right for the future. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, wow. 2 years, 10 years. I've spoken with numerous constituents, those that are farmers, those that are not farmers, those that know about the Conservation District, those that have no idea what it is. And I've talked with folks at the Farm Bureau as well, and received valuable input as well as from the public hearing. And we have no supervision, direct supervision over the Conservation District. That's clearly a state issue. And the previous board voted for a 1-year duration to keep the pressure on and keep the eyeballs on, kind of in a pseudo supervisory type role. And they have proven themselves, in my opinion. And so now, in my opinion, it's time to move on to provide the Conservation District consistency without disruption to them, without disruption to the BoCC. And I want to vote for something rather than just against something. And whatever we decide today, or whenever we decide this, the direction would be, we might be tying, if we went 10 years, tying 2 or 3 more Board of County Commissioner boards to that level of service for 10 years. And that doesn't make me completely comfortable. But 1 year's, I'm headstrong against a 1 year. I do understand there's a serious flaw in the legislation regarding the election process. And we have, other than influence, we have zero impact on that election process at all. And it's almost with the same regard with oversight, a bit impotent there. And so I am for an ordinance regarding rates and charges, but I am leaning toward, again, 10 years would be nice. 1 year is too infrequent or too minimal for me, but the recommendation was for 5 years, and I'm very comfortable with 5 years. Based on all the recommendations I've heard from all the constituents, to include Farm Bureau.
So what I'm hearing, Commissioners, is there is a consensus among the board to go ahead and implement rates and charges. I just want to have that concurrence. Thank you. Now, we have 3 different options that you may consider. One is Commissioner Messer, 10 years, Commissioner Edwards, 2 years, and Commissioner Hutchins, 5 years as a result of the recommendation from the Conservation District Board of Supervisors. So,
So my thinking is, if Commissioner Edwards is willing to come up already to double what he was initially for, and if Commissioner Menser wanted to decrease, then perhaps we could meet somewhere.
so there's a couple of proposals. The only way we can resolve this is for actually exercising your perspective. So,
Pretty obvious where this is going, and if I don't get a second vote for 10 years, I would support 5 years. So I think that's where this is gonna, we can go through the little exercise, but that's obviously where it's gonna land, so.
Do you have any thoughts, though? It'd be nice if it was unanimous, but I give you an option.
No, my concern is our responsibility to the taxpayers that are paying the bill. And I think anytime we can have adequate oversight of spending the taxpayers' money without unduly burdening the entity, I think that is the better decision. So I'm probably going to, if the compromise isn't going to be less than 5, I'm probably going to vote against it, only because, not because I'm against the Conservation District. I'm very much in favor of the work they do, but I'm here representing the taxpayers in Thurston County, and I take that job very seriously. And so I'm going to stick to my original 2 years because I think that's adequate to let the process proceed and let the Conservation District continue to do very good work. But it does give us some oversight because we can't come back from what we grant. And that is my problem. So I'll leave it up to my seatmates. It is the democratic process. The majority will move forward, and that's what will rule. But I have to say, I am very concerned the way the tax dollars are spent in this county. Not only on this, those of you that watch these movies are these movies as a regular activity
movies
will often see me questioning the way the dollar is spent. So
it's a reality TV show.
yeah, it's
that.
a reality TV show. So I'm going to kind of stick to my guns, if you will. I respect these other positions, but I just feel it's, in my estimation, it's very important that we continue adequate oversight when we're talking about millions of dollars.
I have one more line to add, and that.
My line
you have
is,
more?
you'll see in the next agenda item how concerned I am about protecting our tax dollars and providing oversight in terms of our budget and where we're headed. But this is something that has been funded for 70 years or something, and is one of the work that this group does for our community in a non-regulatory fashion. I mean, literally every single board meeting for or every board meeting or every other board meeting for the last 3 or 4 months, we've had an agenda item where the Conservation District is partnering with, there's an agreement, and they're partnering with it on a project. I mean, we see, sitting at the board up here, on a basically week-to-week basis, all the work the Conservation District does. So the idea that even in the terrible dysfunction of 2018, I still think it was a detriment to the community that they didn't get their funding passed, because the staff and the work was still getting done, even though they were having all sorts of problems with administration and whatnot. The work still needed to be done and was still being done in a valuable way. So I can't foresee a set of circumstances by which we would not want this organization funded over the next decade. So.
Well, let me finish up, though, because I want to get, that was one of my final lines, was that when my seatmate, when Gary says that he's watching out for the taxpayers, that's not to infer that I am not.
No.
I'm watching out for the taxpayers, I'm watching out for the ratepayers, I'm watching out for the folks that participate in the Conservation District and the work they do. So I am as well. Go ahead.
Part of this problem lies with the state legislature in not addressing how conservation districts are really overseen in the past, and that's coming up in the future, I guess. So I don't know where that'll lead. We never know what we don't know. So I really think there's been some litigation issues. I think there's litigation pending yet in some case. I just hate to move forward, and it's kind of like your teenager wrecked your car, and you put them on restriction for a week, and then you went and bought them another car. I think we need to have a proven track record for me to be truly comfortable. I'm very comfortable the way things are going, but I'm a trust and verify type of a person. I trust, but I want to verify. So I still think it is extremely important that we perform adequate oversight for the taxpayers' money.
And I wouldn't give my teenager a new car and then handcuff him or her. So go ahead, Romero.
So I will bring this item for your formal vote on the October 15, 2019 Board of County Commissioners. And the ordinance that is going to be before you will be implementation of their rates and charges following the recommendation of the Board of Supervisors for 5 years. That's how the ordinance is going to be coming before you. And just to be clear for the public, the board provided direction to implement the rates and charges, but also the majority of the board provided direction to include in the ordinance a 5-year period, with Commissioner Edwards voted against it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're screaming along now. Next is the flex unit. This will be short.
And sweet?
Good grief. That's delusional. Okay, so the flex unit.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. This is a follow-up to the briefing that you received on the flex unit on September 18th.
May I just add, just for the record, there's no one, no administrators from the Sheriff's Office in attendance?
No. Heidi Thompson, she's the Chief Financial Officer, for the record.
That's the
Yeah.
chief. So it's not because what I'm hearing, they don't care, they're just not available. They're out of
No,
town,
and
out
I'll
of
brief
state.
you that I did have a meeting with the Sheriff's Office leading to this meeting. So
Okay.
they are full aware of the conversation that I'm going to be proposing to you today. So let me, you have a copy of this document. I'm going to walk you through that. And this was the document that was presented to you on the September 18, 2019 options. And the options, it was presented to you. It was option number A, which included the capacity of 120 beds. And the staff provided a cost estimate of just about $39.4 million, close to $40 million. Option B was about the implementation of a project that it was 40 beds, and with a cost estimate of just about $19 million. The background behind this was option A, the 120 beds. That was an expectation created when the first phase, what is already operating, including the second phase back in early stages of design. And at that point, when the current jail was constructed, the second phase, because of budget constraints, could have been built. That was the expectation at that time. Option number B was based on a constraints on the budget as to how we can probably build a facility within the $12 to $13 million construction cost. Okay, that's key on my comment. You also had a conversation that perhaps it may be another option in between option A and option B. There could be about $25 million. This is not including, he was just having that conversation with you. That perhaps includes the 40-bed facility in constructing the shell to allow for a future expansion of the jail. And that's just about $25 million. You also heard some perspective as to where the money will come from to fund this particular project. And the only revenue source that we have is the real estate excise tax 1, so also known as the REIT 1. The REIT 1 is intended to fund county facilities, so this particular project fits within the requirements of that funding. You also heard on the September 18th, the current revenue projections for the real estate excise tax 1, the REIT 1, can probably fund a potential municipal bond for $35 million for a period of 30 years. And the revenue projections that we have on the REIT 1 allows to the paying of the principal plus the interest of the $35 million potential bond. You also heard that perhaps the $35 million will not be able to reach the 120 beds because the 120 beds was $40 million. So based on the budget availability, really option number 8 is something that we cannot afford. And that was the perspective from staff to you. Also, staff provided you some perspective that you need to be prudent in not using all the capacity of the REIT 1 of the $35 million. Because depending on how the vote will go on the courthouse, you need to reserve some capacity on this fund for a potential Plan B. And the recommendation from the staff was that perhaps you may consider a $25 million bond for 30 years, and that's how the option AB came to be, a 40-bed facility plus the shell that allows for a future expansion. So when we concluded that, there was a couple of items that I will ask the board to consider. And it was mainly related to, from the risk, the point of view. The do-nothing option carries some potential risk related to litigation, and I think you're full aware of that is with the Disabilities Rights of Washington having an expectation that perhaps the county needs to do something to address the current needs of the jail. Because right now we're housing individuals on areas they are not suited for long-term holdings and incarceration. So, and that is the at least from the administrative point of view, is the concern, is the do-nothing approach carries some legal risks, potential legal risks. Certainly, the other two options, whether it's option B, option A, from my point of view, is something the county cannot afford that. It will be option B or option B modified. That will put you in $20 to $25 million between what you would like to consider. Also, as a result of that conversation on September 18, there was a question as to, by Commissioner Edwards, what if we build this facility and then we remain empty, as it remained empty for a couple of years when we built the current jail? Because if we build it, it wouldn't have the ability to fund the operations of the jail, then it will be a fruitless exercise. This is my wording, not yours, Commissioner. And so staff took the opportunity to address the question that Commissioner Edwards provided, and I'm going to walk you through the last page of this little package. In here, Robin Campbell, myself, had an initial conversation as to how we can probably provide funding for additional correction officers, and what level of correction officers could we be able to suggest to you in terms of the affordability of the available funds.
As you go through that final page, we also align, for us, we have A, B, and C as options up front, whether we do the full build out or not.
Yeah.
But these are options 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, but those are options for
personnel.
Personnel.
Got that, but also it talks about the expansion.
Yeah, let me walk you through this.
Thank you.
And hopefully that can clarify your concerns. So, so we went through a process as to, there was a staffing study, and you were part of that, which is, it requires close to an additional 19 correction officers if the 120-bed build-out will be. And certainly, we are not in the position to reach that because the funding constraints are such that we don't have the ability to do that. So really the conversation was focused on, based on what we have, how much we can afford.
Can you clarify something for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you saying that we would need to hire 19 FTEs to do it, right?
No, there was 19, but remember you added 7 additional correction officers last year, so that reduced to just 14 that you will need for the 120 beds. Okay, I'm just
19,
giving you the...
let's see, I'm 19, and so 12,
It
7
doesn't-
is 19.
12.
12? I'm trying to get the numbers
No,
straight. in my head.
it was more than that because and it is more complicated because it's one thing is the current operations of the jail require a certain level of additional correction officers because they need to additional oversight for those individuals who are housed and
like on the floor
Right,
and places
right.
like that. Okay.
But when and if the additional jail was be constructed, then some of those individuals will be also used to the new operations of the jail because they will not need additional oversight on those current stages. So, and that's how the 1914 came to be.
Okay.
And considering that you already funded 7 correction officers last year, and they're already, I believe, operating, then the next step was on that staffing study, it will be 14 additional FTEs to support the jail expansion. Okay.
The 118 bed version.
Right. So then begs the question, since perhaps we cannot afford the 120 bed, what will be the right level of additional correction officers will be? And the exercise that we went through is really as to how much we can afford. Okay, and that is what is the proposal before you, is really option number 1 that you see on all the different options in here. And the option number 1 carries the creation of 10 additional correction officers, and it will be up to the sheriff's office to determine what that is. So we made an initial estimate that salaries and benefits will be about $1.2 million. This is yearly costs, okay, yearly costs. $1.2 million. Additional equipment training will be an additional $50,000. In other costs, which includes additional food, additional facility costs because of the additional space, that will be an estimate of an additional $250,000. So a total of $1.5 million, they will be perhaps needed to create 10 correction officers. So this proposal was presented to the sheriff last week. We had a lengthy conversation. The sheriff was present, the undersheriff, as well as the Chief Toma. And the conversation was if the 10 additional corrections officers will be enough to operate the 40-bed facility. And the response was positive. There's opportunities as to how they can work within those constraints. Now, then the next question was where the money will come from to fund those 10 additional correction officers. And again, the makeup of those correction officers, we don't know. The sheriff's office will have to determine whether it's going to be technicians, sergeants. I don't know how the hierarchy works really at the jail. So we have 3 options as to how we're going to be able to fund the $1.5 million in terms of the revenue. We still have capacity on the detention sales tax, and the capacity that we have is $600,000, and that is a prudent suggestion, making sure that we don't deplete the fund in the long term because we have obligations that we continue to pay on the detention sales tax, as you may recall. The next option was considering that we're going to be adding capacity of additional beds. It was intuitive that perhaps we will not be in need for too many contract beds, okay? And so the proposal here is to reduce, not to eliminate, is to reduce the contract beds by 283,000 in the upcoming year. And lastly, the remainder $617,000 will have to come from the general fund. That is no other option as to what that would be. So that amounts to $1.5 million. If you add the $600,000 from the detention sales tax, savings from the reduced cost of the contract beds, which is general fund, of $283,000, and an additional $617,000 from the general fund. In this $617,000 on the general fund, we made the projections, and there's something that it could probably be absorbed if the board would like to continue to have a $10 million ending fund balance, and that is key. Okay?
You done?
Yes, I'm done.
I would just add one caveat to what you said, and that was doing nothing is not an option.
No, it is an option.
Well, it's always an option,
It
but I
is an
understand it was
option.
in context.
My perspective is it carries some legal risk, and this is just my perspective.
Right, but I would add to that, doing nothing carries that, but even further, delaying a decision carries substantial risk of a lawsuit. It's already been called out by DRW. So doing nothing, pretty much guaranteed. Delaying is going to be seen as no action as well. And so it's kind of a pseudo no action. So with that, I'll turn to my seatmates.
I just have a clarifying question before we get into
The debate.
bigger policy. So this dissension, this $600,000 from detention sales tax, I don't really understand, like, where's that money now being spent? How are we?
Ending fund balance. We have an ending fund balance, so we do have capacity on the ending fund balance of the detention sales tax.
And every year we have that?
Yeah, so the proposal in here is for you to consider $600,000 from the detention sales tax. In projecting that is still having a fund balance that covers our obligation. So we don't deplete the fund with the $600,000.
Nothing else gets cut or affected, impacted in any way from the things that are being spent out of that?
No, what is going to happen is, and again, this is a conservative approach just to make sure that nothing is cut, what is already being funded under the detention sales tax, and also taken through maybe in the next 10, 12 years or 15 years when we start retiring some of the debt. They will repay with the detention sales tax, such as the juvenile facility we pay from the detention sales tax. Portions of the existing jail we pay from the detention sales tax. But the $600,000 doesn't affect the obligation the county has to pay the debt. Nothing changes. This is additional capacity that we have in the fund balance.
Why wasn't this money, if this money was sitting there available, why wasn't this money spent by the board last year for more corrections officers when the staffing study said we needed 12 and I think the board approved 7? Why did this money just get left sitting there if that was available to fully fund the correction?
Well, I cannot attest to what the board's thought process was, but this has been part of the 10-year plan when we provided the report to you during the budget. And the same was last year. There's always been a low capacity in the detention sales tax to fund others. So I think perhaps the board last year, when they fund 7 additional corrections officers, was a prudent approach without getting to the depletion of the detention sales tax, knowingly perhaps there's something needed to be done on the flex unit.
Okay.
No, this is a good question.
We don't usually have the luxury to do that, so I'm just making sure I understand.
Go ahead.
Option 1, the funding of the
10.
150, 1,500,000.
Yeah.
Option 1, right?
Yeah, 10
10
correction
FTEs.
yeah.
That's basically based on if everything continues status quo. The economy doesn't slip, because if the economy slipped, the revenue from detention sales tax would drop dramatically. Probably we'd have problems with rented out bed space, and the general fund that gets a lot of its money from sales tax would probably slip as well. So I don't look at these as very sustainable funding sources to accomplish this mission. And it's not too much different, in my estimation, at this point at least. I'm not saying I couldn't be educated a little more on it, but when a prior board built the existing jail facility that we have today, we had a slip, in the economy, and that really set everything back. So that's my first initial concern. But I've been talking with Shelley Willis from the Family Education and Sports Services, and there's a new manager over there, Ross Hunter. He might be a secretary or assistant secretary over at DSHS on youth detention. And we've got 80 empty beds over at our juvenile facility. And I think it's just crazy that even though we can't mix prisoners, we know we have to keep juveniles separate from adults and men separate from women. But it amazes me that we cannot come up with a plan to benefit the taxpayers again that would utilize those 80 empty beds, whether it, maybe all the women could stay in that portion of that facility, build the juveniles a separate little holding facility. I don't know exactly what to do because it hasn't been studied in depth yet. But Shelley said that she's got young women that are in need of some incarceration while they're going through their treatment process. And she's very interested in maybe those empty bed spaces in conjunction with DSHS. Maybe we could come up with a plan that would benefit our community without building this new center. That's all. So initially, I'm not ready, from my perspective, to move forward unless we explore all of these other options that could come up with a solution that give us a better bang for the buck with the tax dollars. That's all. So that's good.
For clarification, you're looking at potentially building another site for the juveniles and then moving women in?
Into the existing 90,
juvenile hall.
There's 90 beds over there.
Right.
Take these, but those 90 beds are being tied up by 10 young people.
Right. I get that, yeah.
Maybe we could move in some temporary housing. I don't know what it would be, but it would certainly be way less than what's being proposed here. And I don't know how all of it would fit with FTEs, but I think we're obligated to explore a little more than we're doing. That's all.
Jeff,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
we had, I agree. I'm not big on the juvenile facility for all the reasons that the presiding judge laid out in the letter, but conceptually, I agree with you in that I've got a March memo where a proposal was discussed about the work release facility and putting people on EHM and utilizing that. I've got a February memo to the board where it was, one of the options was remodeling one of the existing dormitories to create the flexibility. Because we have the flexibility issue and then we have a capacity, I won't call it an issue because I don't know that we have an issue. We have a flexibility issue and we have a capacity proposal. And I think we need to separate those out because I am absolutely agree with Commissioner Hutchings. We can't do nothing with respect to flexibility. We have to meet, it's not just about legal risk, it's also about treating people humanely in our correctional facility. So I'm going to continue to, my comment should not be interpreted as delay in terms of not getting something done. I want to get something done. But I have 3 levels of concern about this 40-bed flex unit, and I just want to lay it out, kind of one by one. One is about the budget. I've been beating a drum for a balanced budget. We don't have a balanced budget. We're at this year's projected budget is $1.4 million in deficit. We've just learned last week we have a policy passed, a decade ago that we're supposed to present a balanced budget, and I'm not going to be, when we get into biennial budget discussions, I am going to be insisting that we have a plan that leads us to a balanced budget for this county. I don't see how we fit this financial model into that, especially when we just approved I voted against 5 new discretionary positions in our budget. At no point when we were discussing those 5 positions were we being brought, and again, it may just be a timing issue, I'm not pointing the finger, but I think when we were discussing a new deputy and a new law clerk and 2 extending CPED positions, we should have been also discussing the fact that we might need 10 new corrections officers. That should have been right there on the table. Because if we're going to be doing that, I want to go back and re-vote on all the positions that discretionary positions that we added in August. So I definitely don't want this situation that Commissioner Edwards brought up where we build something and we can't open it. That was a disaster for the county in terms of financially and politically and people's confidence in county government. So that's one part of my concern. Second part of my concern is public opinion. Using one of Ramiro's phrases, let me take you back to the public process that we entered into before the biennial budget, where we had public open houses and the big boards about how budgeting is done, and the red and the green and the blue dots. I went to 2 of those open houses. People could put 3 green dots on the things they thought were the highest priority for the county. They could put a blue dot anywhere if they wanted the county to spend money on it, and they got 3 red dots to place on something that they absolutely did not want county funds going toward. In both public forums, building new capacity for the jail was a sea of red dots. There was not 1 blue dot, there was not 1 green dot. There was a sea of red dots. Now I know that's not a scientific process and that's not a scientific survey, but if that process means anything, if you can learn anything about that, if there's any use in doing that at all, the one takeaway as I walked out of those rooms is the public does not want to build more jail. So that's something I think we don't want to forget, because we do that for a reason. We want the public to hear what they want. The third issue is criminal justice policy. When you build jail, you tend to fill the jail. We have worked so hard over the last few years, and I credit previous boards for working toward innovative justice approaches that reduce our jail population. We heard the prosecuting attorney tell us last week that he thinks that the policies that we're working towards are going to continue to reduce those numbers. So I don't want to reverse the gains we've made. I just sat last week at the Olympia's community court and sat in on their whole session to see what they're doing there. There's a whole stack of articles from all over the country about how this is a model. 4 places in the country are doing this. I'd rather invest money in that kind of a criminal justice model that's going to reduce our jail impact before we start to build a $20 or $25 million expansion to our jail. We do not need capacity, we need flexibility. So I think we need to think about how we get the flexibility. in something we can afford to keep our budget balanced over the next 3, 4, or 5 years, I'd like to look at, whether we can remodel a pod. When that issue came up, the prosecuting attorney said he thought that could be workable. We didn't get a workup on that. For whatever reason, it was chosen to present us with a workup on a 118 unit we can't possibly afford. So that was kind of a waste of effort. And so basically we've been given one option that's been worked up with the specific numbers, which is the 40-bed flex unit. And when I got to the table, I wanted to believe in that unit. I wanted to believe that we could make that work. It's a third of the size of the original, and I thought, and we needed the flexibility, and I thought, okay, that's a reasonable approach. But when I see the numbers, it's not a reasonable approach. And we're going to have to do something different. There's no way I can approve a budget next year that's got another, after I already voted against almost $700,000 worth of positions in this budget, and now I'm going to turn around and say I'm going to add $617,000 plus another $1 million from these other two sources. When I don't believe we need the capacity, I can't do that. There has to be another way.
I'm just picturing you in court. I'm
Ladies and
sorry.
gentlemen of
And I
the
mean
jury.
that with respect, I do. But when you're talking about taking the pod and reworking it, remodeling it, we're talking about still the same thing, protecting those vulnerable folks that need protection, turning them into individual cells, right?
Right.
And I don't remember any numbers on that. Go
So
ahead.
when you're done, I can probably walk you through some of the comments that I've heard
Okay.
and maybe provide some perspective.
But that's an excellent point on the community outreach, a sea of red dots, yeah.
I do
Go ahead.
have one
Go ahead.
issue. We oftentimes try to keep things kind of compartmentalized, if you will, and we don't discuss it almost like what you're referring to, Commissioner, that we didn't discuss this stuff in context with other FTEs. So my question would be to the county manager, have we had any assurances from the city of Olympia that they're going to buy into some kind of a jail holding area or something at the new county courthouse? I mean, that was talked about. They were going to kick in $30 million or something like that. And I've never heard any more about that they were they planning on kicking in? Is that still, I'm obviously not in favor of the courthouse project moving forward, but nonetheless, it's a democratic process and we'll see. But I'd like to know if they're still committed to putting that type of a financial assistance, if you will, or trade-off into this, because we are talking about jail space. So, anything new on any of that?
I haven't heard anything.
No, I'm asking the county manager. Is
Yeah,
there anything
when
new?
you're ready,
Okay.
I can probably provide some responses to
I just
all
want to
your
add one more thing in, I forgot, is that you said this whole funding structure that we can afford it on this basis is based on a $10 million fund balance minimum. And that is not an acceptable minimum for me. So that colors into why this doesn't seem like we can afford it, because I don't accept that as being something that is good financial policy for the county.
I'm ready.
So let me go back and let me take you back.
That was funny.
And back in 2016, when we were looking at the flex unit project, we looked at different alternatives. Alternatives included remodel of the old jail back here, looking at the FJC, the juvenile facility, and on the dollars and cents related to the juvenile facility, it was not necessarily a cost savings at that time, because the amount of improvements they needed to implement to separate juveniles with adults, rework all the court system, because right now they provide services to juveniles, all the court systems there, funding a new facility. And now if you're concerned about the operational cost, it would have been a lot more expensive, because then you have a totally different adult unit on the FJC. And I can probably give you another copy of that briefing back in 2016. That is, we did some high-level assessment of the cost. Related to your question of assurance from the City of Olympia, whether they'd like to have the municipal court as part of the new courthouse, that is still on their plans. I continue to have conversations with staff. I think that what they're going through the process is what is this financial strategy to support that. So that's still part of the plan.
But no plan yet.
But no, because the only something concrete is we need to have an interlocal agreement, and we're working towards that goal to have an interlocal agreement with the City of Olympia to determine roles and responsibilities. As far as I understand, it's still on the plans. And some of the items Commissioner Messer stated, the public input, do you recall? I think it was the strategic plan as we were developing the strategic plan and all the dots and everything else was not necessarily related to the budget.
There was a Budget 101 board there, though.
But it was the strategic plan as to how, the strategies need to be built as part of the strategic plan. The pod remodel that you recall, that was something the Sheriff's Office was not interested in pursuing. And that is why the staff didn't pursue on additional studies on that. They didn't believe, and this is paraphrasing at that time, they didn't believe it's going to be effective as to how that remodel of the pod will work. And again, I'm paraphrasing what I heard way back then, and I can probably provide the meeting notes at some point for you to see, but that was the reason as to why that option was not pursued in terms of additional information. Related to the budget, I believe it is a concern. It is something that you need to always be aware as to what is the end fund balance that you feel comfortable. But regardless of whether it's this much or this much in terms of additional jail capacity or any other strategies, there's only two options to fund this in terms of additional correction officers. The detention sales tax, I mentioned to you the capacity, and the other option is the general fund. There is no other options that we have. So it really is I don't want to put the board in a very difficult position, but this is a very difficult decision that you need to exercise your vote on.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So we have some unknowns, basically, when it comes to FTEs or if we move forward.
If I may, you also made the comment on when the economy, they perhaps may, we did estimate a little bit of a downturn on the economy when we developed the 10-year plan for the detention sales tax. And you also, on the general fund, when we had the model in front of you, included a little bit of a recession on that. Whether the recession is equals to the 2008, 2009, well, it's not to that level. But certainly we absorb some of that in the projection. So.
But I guess I'm skeptical. I'll just be real blunt about it. I'm skeptical about any assessment that has been made in the past that discouraged us from moving in a particular direction. And I'm going to use the juvenile center as an example of that. I don't know who came up with what costs, but even our own people that were making assessments early on this jail addition that we were talking about, it was something like $14 million or something, I think, earlier this year that we were going to be spending. So people do make mistakes. I don't know how that all came about, but it wasn't realistic in the end when we got to looking at it. So I'm a little bit skeptical that we couldn't build a 10 or 12 bedroom house or something, stick built, on that property over there, way less than what we're doing here, and move those juveniles into that. They don't have to have 3-foot thick concrete walls. I mean, maybe we can make the first floor out of blocks or something if you want to make it that secure. But I really think there are other options that we can explore to save the taxpayers a lot of money. The whole juvenile justice model, if you will, is geared towards community supervision and such, trying to alleviate problems. And that facility was built under a different era. And it just doesn't make any sense to me that we could have potentially 90 empty beds over there if we were successful in this other model. So I just think we need to start looking around. This business about building a jail and letting it sit empty for 6 years or doing something here and not having the resources to deal with it. Even maintenance on this facility, we haven't even been able to keep it up, yet we're looking to go somewhere else. So I don't have much faith in the process, but I'm willing to sit down and scrutinize that process and see if we can come up with a better expenditure than what we've got laid out to try and save some money. Because I don't see that we've got the money to do this with. So we might be coming at this from two different directions, but I think we're trying to get to the same place.
As for, I'll use your analogy of the teenager in a car, and if my teenager wanted a Tesla or a Buick, and I said, well, how about a Toyota Corolla? And he or she said, well, that's not an option. I'd like to hear from the sheriff, rather than it's just not a viable option. What about remodel? What would that entail with displacement? What would that get us, if anything? What would it cost? Those types of things. And is it a plan A, B, C, D or something that we can do that might stave off county liability, but also protect folks in the jail that need separated cells and segregation?
Could I have a comment on
Sir,
follow-up
please.
on
Yeah.
what your comments are? I have talked to the sheriff about this, and he is in a dilemma.
I know
He knows
that. I
we're
know that.
very
Yeah.
limited in resources. But, you know, that standalone facility over there that we now call our county jail, that, we inherited what we've got, but we have it. So we need to do the best job we can with what we have. But when you think about that being a remote location, if we would even remodel something down here in the existing jail, maybe we could have a little portion down in there that we could fix up enough to have 10 or 12 cells for kids, if you will. Has to be separate from all adults. Also, this business of having a standalone facility and not being able to bring people to court on a spur of the moment issue, because oftentimes the calendar will clear for one reason or another, and they could just grab someone up and bring them up for a quick bond hearing or whatever it is, as long as they could get the attorneys there and alleviate some of our jail overcrowding by having availability to our inmates, those that are in the process of having their situation adjudicated, not the long-term folks that have already been sentenced. We could keep those over there where they are now and maybe do something right here. I don't know what it would entail, but I don't think it'd be that much to have a certain percentage of unsentenced individuals here for their first, I don't know, couple of weeks or something, temporary housing, so that we could get them through the court system quicker. Because our judges have been doing a very good job at trying to accommodate this whole jail population issue that we're stuck with. So a lot of options that I think we can explore.
I just want to read this. This is from the February memo, just so people know what we're talking about. It's renovation. Pro is this option, which entails renovation of an existing dorm pod into 28 cells with 28 to 56 beds, is within budget at about 10.3 million. Because there is no expansion of the building footprint, renovation costs are estimated at 6.8 million, stormwater costs of up to 3.5 million, and these were like really loose numbers, but I'm just reading what the option is. Limited to mitigation. Con, the estimated cost for this option does not include expense associated with temporarily relocating inmates during construction. Number of beds may be insufficient for future needs, no space included for additional jail support or the courthouse. They were going to put a courtroom in. So is that a Toyota Corolla edition of? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it may be the only kind of vehicle that the county can afford, is all I'm saying. I mean, you don't have additional footprint. You shouldn't have big staffing needs because you're working within the same
combined,
footprint. It's going to be a disruption, and it's going to, there's going to be a big pain in the butt to have people have to be relocated during a temporary thing. But I mean, it's not fair to us to only present one option, the kind of most expensive option we can afford, without being able to at least weigh the pros and cons of the less expensive option. We're not just making stuff up. There are specific ideas, and the work release facility is another one from a March 2016 memo. I just need more information about the infeasibility of those before I could go forward on this option that is really going to put us in a financial quandary or dilemma.
Could I follow up on Commissioner?
If you do it quickly, yes.
Okay.
Please.
You mentioned stormwater was going to be about $3 million in that particular memo. I wonder if that couldn't be funded through the stormwater fund that we have as a completely separate fund to get it away from some of this other jail funding and current expense and all that.
No, that cannot be funded through a stormwater fund. We explored that already.
You already explored that.
So if I may,
Please, yeah.
a good conversation. I didn't expect to be an
Wow.
easy go through this. So what I'm planning to do, because obviously some of the questions that you have are good questions, and the experts needs to be in the room to provide their perspective. I will not be able to tell you as to why the sheriff's office perhaps, but as opposed to the remodel of the pod, I'm not in the position to say that, and not that I want to. And so I will organize another work session, maybe setting up an hour, that I can probably bring all the different stakeholders to in the room, and we exercise the same conversation. And hopefully at that time, you can get some of the answers that you're looking for, and hopefully at that time you can provide a direction, not necessarily a decision, but at least a direction as to how perhaps you would like to move forward.
That's helpful. You like that?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. 12:01. Poor Carrie.
What I can probably do, Commissioners, if it's okay, you have a planning session this Thursday, and I can probably bring the remaining items for the Commissioners Check-In Thursday, which is from 9:30 to 11. And we
Bring
have
the CJTA
yeah.
and the Coyote.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us, though, Carrie. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
And code compliance, all three of those?
Yep.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
Can I make just a suggestion or ask a question? Is there any reason we always run out of time on these agenda setting meetings and going into these different issues? I don't need to, I mean, I'll not take a lunch break. I don't care. But I mean, as staff, I know they get scheduled for other things, and then we're goofing up their schedule. But is there any reason we couldn't just schedule right on up until our meeting? We can take a 10-minute break here or there, but why not 4 hours to go right through lunch and get something done? It just drives me bonkers that we don't get enough time to discuss
Well, I hope we
things.
get something done.
I know we're getting some, but we always run out of time, and I don't mind working right through the weekend if that's what it takes.
But that's exactly it. If we build another 400 beds in the jail, are we going to fill it? If we give you another 4 hours, you're going to fill it.
Probably so.
So I know what one of the reasons for the delay is, why it takes so damn long. I mean, darn long.
Probably so.
And I mean that with love and respect.
Yeah,
You know
I
that.
know.
Because
I know.
each one of these things, we run out of time because we got some smart people here, and we have so many the eye on so many different balls around here, and they fund balance and everything else.
Yeah, I don't care. Start early. Doesn't matter to me. Just seems like we need more time.
But I'm concerned also with staff.
Yeah.
And build time in for staff that's sufficient for them.
And we have all these record-keeping requirements, and we have to get it right and all that. So I realize there are issues to address to make it all happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, we just never have enough time to do everything we need to do.
That's a true statement.
And it won't stop, yeah.
Okay, well, food for thought.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's good food. All right, with that, everything else is on pause until next time, and this work session is adjourned.